The old school had always been an unsettling place. As the night security guard, I kept an eye on the dilapidated building, a relic from a long past. The creaking floors, broken windows, and peeling paint only added to the building's eerie reputation. But nothing prepared me for what I experienced that night. It started like any other shift. The air was thick with dust and silence, punctuated only by the occasional groan of the structure settling. I made my rounds, checking the locked doors and setting off the alarms at the entrance. Everything was as it should be, or so I thought. Then I heard it, a faint sound, almost like the distant laughter of children. At first I dismissed it as my imagination playing tricks on me. After all, this was an abandoned school. But the laughter grew louder and more distinct. It echoed through the empty halls, sending a shiver down my spine. I stopped in my tracks, straining to listen. The laughter came from the west wing of the building, an area that had been sealed off years ago. My curiosity got the better of me. I decided to investigate despite the unsettling feeling that gnawed at me. The hallway leading to the west wing was shrouded in darkness, the only light coming from my flashlight. The beam cut through the gloom, revealing faded lockers and broken classroom doors. The laughter was louder now, and I could hear faint, whispering voices like a soft murmur in the background. I reached the end of the hall and pushed open the creaky door to the west wing. The air was colder here, carrying with it an inexplicable chill. My flashlight revealed a scene frozen in time. Dusty desks, torn posters on the walls, and a thick layer of grime covering everything. It looked like it had been a while since anyone had been here. I was about to turn back when I noticed something strange, a small old book lying on a dusty desk. It looked out of place, as though it had been recently disturbed. I approached the desk and picked up the book. The cover was leather, cracked and worn, and the title was embossed in faded gold letters, Emily's Diary. I opened the diary carefully. The pages were yellowed with age, and the handwriting was delicate and neat. The entries spoke of a young girl's life in the school, her fears, and the strange occurrences she had experienced. The last entry was dated just days before her disappearance. The final entry made my blood run cold. It read, "Something is wrong. I hear voices at night, and they are calling my name. I don't know what to do. If I'm not back tomorrow, please find me." As I read, the temperature in the room seemed to drop further. The whispers I had heard grew louder, now clearly calling my name. I turned around, but the hallway behind me was empty. The laughter had stopped, replaced by a profound silence. I closed the diary and slipped it into my jacket. I had to get out of there. But as I turned to leave, I felt a cold hand brush against my shoulder. I spun around, my flashlight casting erratic shadows on the walls. There was no one there. I quickly returned to the security office, my heart pounding. I checked the security cameras, but no sign of anyone entering the west wing. The footage showed only the empty hallways and occasional flicker of light. The school was silent again, but the feeling of being watched lingered. I knew I had uncovered something important, but I didn't fully understand it. Emily's diary revealed a hint of something dark and mysterious. Sitting alone in the security office, I couldn't shake the feeling that the school's past was reaching out to me, and children's laughter was only the beginning. The old school creaked and groaned under the weight of its history. The darkness of the abandoned halls seemed to stretch endlessly, punctuated only by the occasional flicker of the dim flashlight I carried. My shift had begun like any other, but tonight felt different. The usual silence was pierced by faint, unsettling sounds, echoes of children's laughter that seemed to dance through the empty corridors. I shook my head, trying to dismiss the sounds as figments of an overactive imagination. This building had been closed for years, and any noises were likely the result of its deteriorating structure. Yet the laughter persisted, growing louder as I moved deeper into the building. I followed the sounds cautiously, my footsteps echoing in the eerie stillness. The laughter led me to the old wing of the school, a part of the building that hadn't been used in decades. The air grew colder as I approached, and an inexplicable chill crept over me. I tried to shake off the growing sense of unease and pushed open the door to what once was a classroom. The room was filled with dusty desks and old, forgotten school supplies. As I scanned the room with my flashlight, something caught my eye, a small, leather-bound diary lying half-buried under a pile of old textbooks. I picked it up, and the cover was cracked and worn. It was surprisingly heavy, and dust puffed as I opened it. The pages were filled with neat, looping handwriting. The diary belonged to a student named Emily Parker, a name that rang a distant bell in the back of my mind. I had heard of her, the girl who disappeared years ago under mysterious circumstances. Her disappearance had been one of the many unsolved cases associated with this old school. The entries in the diary were unsettling. Emily wrote about feeling watched, hearing whispers in the dark, and growing fear that something terrible was about to happen. Her entries became increasingly erratic, filled with desperate pleas for help and mentions of a curse that she couldn't understand. The final entry, dated the day before her disappearance, was a frantic scrawl. "I can't stay here anymore. They're coming for me." I closed the diary with a shudder, its contents settling heavily on my shoulders. The laughter and whispers I had heard earlier now seemed more sinister, as if they were directly tied to Emily's last moments. I knew I couldn't ignore what I had discovered. The diary was a puzzle piece, and I needed to know more about Emily and the school's dark past. Determined, I decided to delve into the history of the school and its missing students. I searched through old records and newspapers, hoping to find more information about Emily Parker and the circumstances surrounding her disappearance. Each piece of information seemed to lead to more questions, and the deeper I dug, the more I felt the oppressive presence of something watching me. The school had always had an air of mystery, but now, with the diary in hand, the atmosphere felt charged with a darker energy. I was drawn to the old records room, hoping to find more answers. The hallway leading to it was colder than the rest of the building, and the whispers seemed to follow me, growing louder with every step. As I reached the records room, I hesitated momentarily, the air thick with an eerie silence. I pushed open the heavy door and stepped inside. The room was filled with old filing cabinets and dusty folders. My flashlight flickered as I searched through the documents, hoping to uncover something to shed light on Emily's fate. Little did I know that my search would only deepen the mystery and draw me further into the curse that had claimed Emily Parker, and now seemed to be reaching out for me. The school's darkness seemed to press in on me as I navigated the abandoned halls. Each creak of the floorboards and the distant echo of my footsteps only heightened my sense of isolation. The laughter, which had been faint at first, was now unmistakably clear, a chilling reminder that I wasn't alone. My flashlight flickered, casting long, eerie shadows that danced along the walls. I headed toward the source of the sound, feeling an unsettling chill settle around me. I had reached the end of the corridor when I noticed a partially open door, slightly ajar, as though inviting me in. It was a storage closet, its contents a jumble of forgotten supplies and old furniture. A draft blew past me as I pushed the door open, sending a shiver down my spine. I stepped inside, my flashlight illuminating dust-covered shelves and boxes stacked haphazardly. Something caught my eye in the corner of the room, a small old book peeking out from beneath a pile of papers. I picked up the book, brushing off layers of dust to reveal a worn leather cover. It was a diary. My curiosity got the better of me, and I carefully opened it. The pages were yellowed with age, and the handwriting was delicate and precise. The first entry was dated many years ago, long before the school had been abandoned. June 5th, 1982. I'm so excited about my new school. They say it's haunted, but that's a silly story to scare us. I'm not afraid. The entries continued, detailing the daily life of a girl named Emily Rogers. As I read on, I could feel her excitement turning into apprehension. She wrote about strange noises she heard at night and unsettling feelings that something was watching her. Her writing became increasingly frantic. October 12th, 1982. The noises are getting worse. Last night I heard someone whisper my name. I'm so scared, but I don't know who to tell. The others don't believe me. I turned the pages, my hands trembling. The last entry was dated a few days before Emily's disappearance. October 20th, 1982. I saw them again tonight, the shadows in the hall. They're calling me. I have to go find out what they want. I'm scared, but I have to know. My heart raced as I realized the diary belonged to Emily Rogers, the girl who had vanished years ago. The diary provided a chilling glimpse into her final days at the school. It was clear now that the whispers and laughter I had heard were not just figments of my imagination. They connected to Emily's story, and her presence lingered in these halls. I closed the diary, feeling the weight of its history pressing on me. As I stood up, I noticed that the temperature in the room had dropped significantly. The whispering had returned, faint but persistent. It seemed to be coming from the very walls, calling my name. I took a deep breath and left the storage closet, clutching the diary tightly. The hallway felt colder, and the shadows seemed darker. The whispers grew louder, more insistent. I knew I needed to learn more about Emily's disappearance and the school's past. But for now, I had to leave. The sense of being watched was too strong, and I didn't want to risk encountering whatever was still lurking here. I returned to the security office, the diary tucked safely in my bag. The eerie sounds and cold drafts followed me, reminding me that Emily's story was far from over. I felt renewed determination as I prepared to delve deeper into the school's history. I had to uncover the truth and bring closure to Emily's restless spirit. The cold, metallic clang of the old school bell echoed through the empty hallways as I made my rounds. The abandoned school had always been unsettling, but tonight, something felt different. The silence was punctuated by faint, eerie sounds, soft, childlike laughter, and the occasional creak of the wooden floorboards, as if unseen footsteps were trailing just out of sight. My flashlight cut through the darkness as I descended the main corridor. The laughter seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, making it difficult to pinpoint its source. I paused near the entrance to what used to be the art room. The door was ajar, and the darkness inside seemed almost palpable. I hesitated momentarily, then pushed the door open more comprehensively, the creak of the hinges loud in the stillness. The room was filled with old, dusty easels and forgotten art supplies. My flashlight illuminated a few scattered paintbrushes and a tattered canvas. I shivered, feeling a chill that seemed out of place on the warm summer night. I brushed it off as a draft, though I couldn't remember any open windows in the building. As I continued my patrol, the laughter grew louder, more distinct. It was as if a group of children were playing hide-and-seek just out of sight. My rational mind told me it was just the echoes playing tricks on me, but my instincts told me otherwise. I decided to follow the sounds, hoping to find the source and prove to myself that it was my imagination. The sounds led me to the old library at the far end of the building. The door was slightly open, and a faint light was seeping through the crack. I pushed the door open cautiously, and the light from my flashlight revealed rows of dusty, forgotten books. The library was eerily silent now, the laughter gone. I was about to turn away when something caught my eye. A corner of a diary peeking out from under a stack of old books. I approached and carefully pulled the diary from its resting place. It was a worn, leather-bound book with a cracked cover, its pages yellowed with age. I hesitated for a moment, then opened it. The first few pages were filled with the scrawled handwriting of a young girl. The entries described mundane school life but quickly turned darker. The entries spoke of fears, strange noises, and feelings of being watched. One entry in particular stood out. "They're here again. I can hear them calling my name. I don't know how to make them stop." A chill ran down my spine as I read those words. It was clear that the girl had been terrified. As I turned the pages, I found more entries about her growing terror and increasing isolation. Her last entry was dated just a day before she disappeared. It was a desperate plea for someone to come and help her. I closed the diary and glanced around the library, feeling an oppressive weight in the air. The sounds of laughter had returned, faint but unmistakable. My heart pounded, and a cold draft swept through the room. The whispers began again. This time they were more apparent, almost pleading. I quickly returned the diary to its original location and made my way out of the library. The laughter and whispers followed me down the corridor, growing fainter as I approached the exit. My mind raced as I tried to process what I had discovered. The diary, the sounds, the whispers, everything pointed to something deeply unsettling. As I locked up the building and prepared to leave, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The diary had revealed a glimpse into a dark past, and the haunting presence seemed to grow stronger. I knew I had to learn more about the girl and the curse that seemed gripping the old school. The mystery was beginning, and I was now more determined than ever to uncover the truth. The school's corridors seemed even quieter now, as if they were holding their breath. Strange occurrences had become more frequent since I found the diary. The chilling whispers and echoes of laughter were constant companions, gnawing at the edge of my sanity. I knew I needed to understand what was happening, but every step deeper into this mystery seemed to drag me further into a web of fear. That evening, I started digging into the school's history. I sat in the security office, surrounded by dusty old records and archives I had stumbled upon in the school's basement. I knew the missing student's name was Emily Turner, but the information about her was scant. I pored over old newspapers, yearbooks, and any records I could find that might shed light on her disappearance. Emily Turner had been a student here in the late 1970s. From the articles I read, she had been a bright, cheerful girl who vanished without a trace one evening after school. There were theories and rumors, but nothing concrete. The case had gone cold, and the school had eventually been abandoned, leaving Emily's fate a dark mystery. As I flipped through a mainly worn yearbook, I found a photograph of Emily and her friends. She looked happy, her eyes bright and full of life. But something in the photo caught my attention. A shadowy figure was in the background, just barely visible behind the group. It was unsettling, almost as if someone or something had been watching her. I continued my search, focusing on any events or incidents linked to Emily's disappearance. I discovered that there had been a series of unexplained incidents in the school around the time she vanished. Strange noises, objects moving on their own, and even a few reports of sightings of a ghostly figure. The more I uncovered, the clearer it became that something sinister was tied to this place. It wasn't just a case of a missing child. It was like the school was hiding a dark secret. I found an old article mentioning a supposed curse linked to the school's foundation, a curse many had dismissed as local folklore. I needed more information, so I visited the local library and dug into the town's historical archives. The librarian, an older woman named Mrs. Carter, was intrigued by my quest. She told me the school had been built on land that had once belonged to a family with a tragic past. According to local legend, the family had suffered a series of misfortunes, culminating in a sad event that had left a mark on the land. As Mrs. Carter spoke, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was a connection between the family's history and the haunting. The curse, if accurate, seemed to have deep roots in the school's history. I was beginning to piece together a story of tragedy and loss, but the whole picture remained frustratingly elusive. Back at the school, I couldn't ignore the growing dread as night fell. The whispers seemed louder, more urgent. I knew I was getting closer to the truth, but the cost of uncovering it was beginning to weigh heavily on me. The cold spots in the building were becoming more pronounced, and the feeling of being watched was almost unbearable. I returned to the part of the building where I'd found the diary. The whispers were louder here, almost as if they were urging me to stay. I felt a chill as I approached the old classroom where the diary had been found. I had to confront whatever lurked in these halls, but I needed to be prepared. The more I learned, the more I realized that the answers I sought might come at a steep price. I sat in the dimly lit security office, the old diary on the desk before me. The flickering fluorescent light cast eerie shadows across the pages, making the scribbled notes seem to writhe and twist in the darkness. The diary belonged to Emily Carter, who had vanished from this school years ago. Her final entries were filled with fear and unsettling descriptions of things she had witnessed, things that matched the strange occurrences I had been experiencing. As I read through the diary, Emily's handwriting grew more erratic. Her last entry was a frantic scrawl about whispers in the halls and a dark presence that seemed to follow her. The words were chilling, and as I turned the page, I felt a shiver run down my spine. The diary seemed to be a map of her descent into terror, and it was clear she had been terrified before she disappeared. I needed to know more about Emily and what had happened to her. I started digging into the school's archives and local news reports to assemble the puzzle. The deeper I went, the more I uncovered about the school's dark past. The articles described a series of unfortunate events that had plagued the school over the years, including unexplained disappearances and incidents involving strange noises and sightings. Emily's disappearance was one of the most talked about cases, but it remained unsolved. One article mentioned that Emily had been involved in a local legend about a curse placed on the school by a former student. According to the legend, the school administration had wronged the student and vowed to return and haunt the place. This story had been passed down through generations, but no one took it seriously, until now. My research led me to an older woman named Margaret Reynolds, who had been a teacher at the school during Emily's disappearance. Margaret was initially hesitant, but her face grew pale as I explained my findings. She finally admitted that there was some truth to the curse. Emily had been a victim of cruel pranks and bullying by other students, which the administration had covered up to avoid scandal. Margaret revealed that Emily had confided in her that someone, or something, was watching her. Margaret also mentioned a hidden room in the school's basement that had been sealed for decades. According to her, this room was where Emily had been last seen. The room was rumored to be connected to the curse, and Margaret's account seemed to align with the events described in Emily's diary. With this new information, I felt a mix of dread and determination. I needed to find this hidden room and uncover whatever was tied to the curse. Exploring the dark, sealed-off basement was daunting, but the diary and Margaret's testimony convinced me it was necessary. I grabbed my flashlight and headed towards the basement entrance. The air grew colder as I descended the stairs, and my flashlight's beam illuminated the old, rusty door that had been padlocked for years. I forced the lock and pried the door open, revealing a narrow, musty hallway beyond. As I moved deeper into the basement, the whispers became more intense and urgent. The temperature dropped noticeably, and I could see my breath in the cold air. I reached the end of the hallway and found another door slightly ajar. With a deep breath, I pushed it open. Inside, the room was dusty and filled with old furniture and boxes. At first glance, it looked like any other forgotten space. But then I noticed something strange. A faint, glowing outline on the floor that seemed to form a circle. The circle was intricately designed with symbols that matched those described in Emily's diary. I took a step closer, and the whispers grew louder. I felt an overwhelming sense of being watched. I knew I was close to uncovering the truth, but the atmosphere in the room was so heavy that it was almost suffocating. I needed to proceed carefully, or risk becoming part of the curse myself. This was just the beginning. The room held secrets that could reveal the full extent of the curse and hopefully provide a way to end it. As I prepared to investigate further, I knew whatever lay ahead could be dangerous and revealing. I had hoped that finding the diary would clarify, but it only deepened the mystery. That night, as I returned to my usual patrols, the atmosphere in the school was noticeably different. The hallways were colder, the shadows darker, and the usual silence felt charged with an unsettling energy. Walking past the classroom where I had found the diary, I felt an icy draft swirl around me. The temperature dropped suddenly, and my breath became visible, misting in the air. I could hear a faint whisper, barely audible but unmistakable, calling my name. My heart pounded in my chest as I strained to catch the words. "James! James!" I froze, my flashlight trembling in my hand. The whispers seemed to come from all directions, and the hairs on my neck stood on end. I knew the sound wasn't coming from any of the school's old pipes or faulty wiring. This was something different, something supernatural. I took a deep breath and decided to investigate further. I headed down the dimly lit corridor towards the old library, where the diary had been found. The once grand space now lay in ruin, with dusty shelves and scattered books. The whispers grew louder as I walked, and the temperature plummeted even further. I reached the library and pushed open the heavy door. It creaked ominously, and I entered cautiously. The space felt heavy, as if it were holding its breath. I shone my flashlight around, trying to make sense of the oppressive silence. The beam of light flickered over the scattered remnants of what had once been a place of learning. Then I saw it, a shadowy figure at the room's far end. It was faint, almost transparent, but unmistakably there. My flashlight flickered again, and the figure was gone when it steadied. I tried to convince myself it was just a trick of the light, but deep down, I knew it was real. Suddenly, I heard a loud bang from behind me. I spun around, the beam of my flashlight cutting through the darkness. The door to the library slammed shut on its own. I approached it, trying to open it, but it wouldn't budge. Panic set in as I felt trapped. The whispers turned into a cacophony of voices, calling my name in desperate tones. I felt a cold, ghostly hand brush against my arm, sending a jolt of terror through me. I turned, but there was no one there. The shadows seemed to close in on me, and I could barely see through the darkness. In a frantic bid to escape, I pulled at the door again, using all my strength. Finally, with a groan, it creaked open just enough for me to squeeze through. I stumbled out into the corridor, gasping for breath. The whispers faded, but the fear remained. I realized that something was trying to communicate with me. Or maybe something was trying to scare me away from uncovering the truth. Whatever it was growing more intense and personal. I had to find out what was behind these hauntings before they drove me to the edge. That night, as I left the school, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. The whispers still echoed in my ears, and the icy touch of the ghostly hand lingered on my skin. I knew I had to continue my investigation, but I also knew that whatever awaited me in the shadows of the old school was far from ordinary. The haunting had intensified, and with it, the mystery of the curse was becoming darker and more dangerous than ever. Since I discovered the diary, the abandoned school had taken on a new, unsettling character. Each night, as I walked the empty corridors, the once familiar creaks and groans of the building seemed to whisper secrets from a past I was only beginning to understand. The childlike laughter that had initially been a source of curiosity became a chilling echo, a constant reminder that I was not alone in this forsaken place. The first time it happened, I was patrolling the east wing, where I had found the diary. The air grew inexplicably cold, and I could see my breath misting in front of me, even though the heating had long since turned off. I chalked it up to drafts or old building quirks until I heard it, a soft, faint whisper of my name carried on the breeze. Jason. I froze in my tracks, my flashlight casting erratic shadows on the walls. I called out, "Hello, is someone there?" My voice sounded hollow in the vast emptiness. The only response was the echo of my voice. I continued my rounds, trying to shake off the unsettling feeling, but it only worsened. Objects began to move on their own. One night, while checking the old classrooms, I found a stack of books neatly piled on a desk scattered across the floor. No one else had been in the building, I ensured that. I tried to rationalize it as a prank or perhaps a trick of the mind, but deep down I knew something more sinister was at play. The cold spots were the most unnerving. I'd be walking through a hallway feeling fine, and suddenly an intense chill would envelop me. An unseen presence brushed against my skin, sending shivers down my spine. I avoided certain areas of the building, notably where the temperature dropped the most. One evening, the whispering grew louder and more insistent. It came from the old gymnasium, a place I had avoided for fear of disturbing whatever might be there. As I approached the entrance, shuffling footsteps echoed through the space. I pushed open the door, the hinges groaning in protest. The room was dark and silent, save for the occasional flicker of the light bulb hanging from the ceiling. I took a hesitant step inside. My flashlight cut through the darkness, revealing old gym equipment and dusty bleachers. The temperature plummeted as I moved further into the room. The whispering intensified, surrounding me from all sides. "Jason, come closer." I felt a cold, icy hand graze my shoulder. I spun around, but there was no one there. My heart raced, and I struggled to maintain my composure. The flashlight flickered violently before going out altogether, plunging me into darkness. I fumbled with the flashlight, desperately trying to get it back on. When the beam finally cut through the blackness again, I saw something that made my blood cold. At the far end of the gym, a shadowy figure stood. Its form was indistinct, shifting and wavering, but I could make out the outline of a young girl's face. Her eyes seemed hollow, and her expression was one of sorrow and pleading. I stepped towards her, but the figure vanished as quickly as it had appeared. My breathing was ragged, and I felt as if I had just narrowly escaped a nightmarish encounter. I hurried out of the gym, the whispers still echoing. I returned to the security office and tried to piece together what I had seen. Was this the spirit of the missing girl from the diary? Was she trying to communicate something to me? I knew I needed help. Whatever haunted this school was beyond my understanding, and the encounters became more intense and frightening. I resolved to contact paranormal experts and local historians to uncover the truth behind the eerie presence and, hopefully, find a way to put the restless spirit at peace. The night air in the abandoned school was colder than usual, and the creeping chill seemed to seep into my bones. I had been wrestling with sleepless nights and eerie encounters since I discovered the diary, but the whispers that called my name had grown louder and more insistent. The strange occurrences and the relentless cold were pushing me to the edge. I knew I needed help, but from whom? The local paranormal experts, or perhaps someone familiar with the school's past? The following day, I decided to visit the local library to learn more about the school's history and the girl's mysterious disappearance. I sifted through old newspapers and archived records, trying to piece together anything that might explain the haunting presence I was experiencing. As I pored over the yellowed pages of historical records, a librarian named Mrs. Thompson noticed my intense focus and approached me. She was an older woman with a keen interest in local history. After a brief introduction, I told her about the diary I found and the unsettling phenomena occurring in the school. Mrs. Thompson's eyes widened as I recounted the details. "That diary," she said thoughtfully, "sounds like it might be connected to a story that has haunted this town for years." She guided me to a dusty back room filled with more historical documents. There, she pulled out a box of files related to the school. As we sorted through them, I found photographs of the school from decades ago and old articles about the student disappearance of a girl named Emily Carter. The articles detailed how Emily had vanished one day without a trace. Her disappearance had been a local mystery, sparking numerous theories but yielding no solid leads. The last reported sighting was near the school's old library, now part of the abandoned wing where I had found the diary. Mrs. Thompson continued, "There were rumors of a curse or something dark associated with that place. People talked about strange things happening, but nothing concrete was ever proven. It was dismissed as old wives' tales." I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. The more I learned, the more I realized that my experiences were not just random but part of something more profound and unsettling. Determined to get more answers, I contacted a local paranormal investigator, Dave Mitchell. Dave had a reputation for dealing with complex cases, and I hoped his expertise could shed light on the strange happenings in the school. That evening, Dave arrived at the school with his equipment, EMF meters, infrared cameras, and other ghost hunting gear. As we entered the building, I guided him to the abandoned wing, where I had experienced the most intense phenomena. Dave set up his equipment and began his investigation. The air grew heavy as we waited in silence, broken only by the occasional beep of his devices. The cold spots and whispering voices continued, but Dave's equipment began picking up readings that confirmed unusual electromagnetic activity. "This is interesting," Dave said, his voice low but filled with excitement. "There's something here that shouldn't be. We're picking up strong readings in this area." He continued his work, and after some time, Dave captured an EVP electronic voice phenomenon recording. When played back, the recording contained a faint but clear voice saying, "Help me! Find me!" The message sent chills down my spine. Emily's voice? It seemed as though she was still trapped, trying to reach out for help from beyond. The evidence was mounting, but the question remained. What was the source of the curse, and how could it be lifted? Dave suggested we return to the library to investigate further and see if we could find any additional clues. The night was far from over, and the answers we sought seemed just out of reach, hiding in the shadows of the school's dark past. The chill in the air was palpable as I entered the corridor where I had found the diary. Every night since then, the temperature seemed to drop inexplicably whenever I ventured into this part of the old school. Tonight, however, the cold felt more intense, almost unbearable. The diary lay on the desk in the same spot where I had left it. I had read its disturbing entries repeatedly, but I found something new each time. Clues about a curse that seemed to grip this place. Children's laughter, which once seemed faint and whimsical, now echoed with a menacing undertone. I couldn't ignore it anymore. I needed answers. I began to search through the school's records, desperate to piece together the puzzle. The missing student, Emily Johnson, had vanished years ago without a trace. The more I dug, the more I uncovered about her tragic story. Emily had been a bright, lively girl until she started talking about strange things happening in the school, whispers in the hallways, shadows moving on their own. Her diary entries were filled with fear, describing how she felt as though something was watching her. As I pieced together her story, I learned about a tragedy that had occurred in the school's past. A fire that had claimed the lives of several students in the early 1900s. Rumors had circulated that the fire was started by a student who had gone mad. The whispers and the eerie laughter seemed to fit into this dark history. I wondered if Emily had uncovered something that connected her to this long-buried tragedy. Determined to uncover the truth, I contacted a local historian specializing in the school's history. Together, we examined old newspapers and records. The historian confirmed that the fire had indeed resulted from a series of unfortunate events and miscommunications, not just the actions of a disturbed student. The fire left a lingering curse, an evil force that seemed to prey on the school's occupants. Armed with this knowledge, I returned to the school that night, feeling dread and determination. As I walked through the empty hallways, the whispers grew louder and the cold became almost unbearable. I felt an invisible force pushing against me as I returned to the old classroom where I had found the diary. Suddenly, the lights flickered and went out. I was plunged into darkness, my flashlight barely cutting through the blackness. Once distant and eerie, the children's laughter now seemed to come from all directions. My heart raced, but I pressed on, heading toward the source of the sound. In the dim beam of my flashlight, I saw a shadowy figure standing in the middle of the hallway. It was Emily. Her ghostly form was translucent and sad. Her eyes, filled with an eternal sorrow, met mine. For a moment, I felt a pang of sympathy and fear. "Emily," I whispered, my voice trembling. "I know about the fire. I know about the curse. What do you want me to do?" The figure reached out a spectral hand and pointed toward an old, locked storage room. My flashlight flickered erratically, but I could see a strange, ancient-looking key hanging on the wall beside the door. With a deep breath, I took the key and unlocked the storage room. Inside, I found old charred remains and forgotten artifacts from the fire. Among the debris was a journal belonging to the student who had been blamed for the fire. The journal revealed the truth. The student was innocent, and the real culprit had escaped accountability. Emily's disappearance was part of a cover-up to keep the truth hidden. I returned to the main hallway, Emily's spectral presence still lingering. I promised her I would make sure her story and the truth about the fire were known. The cold receded as I left the school, and the whispers faded. The haunting presence seemed to lift as if Emily's spirit had finally found peace. The next day, I contacted the authorities and shared my findings. The story of the school's tragic past and Emily's part was finally exposed. The curse seemed to have lifted, and the school's eerie silence was replaced with a newfound calm. As I left the abandoned school for the last time, I felt relief and sadness. I had faced the darkness of the past and helped bring the truth to light. The school was no longer just a place of whispers and shadows. It was a testament to the power of uncovering the truth and finding closure.